Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're going to be discussing the life of 5'4" Van Ness Gangster Brim named Ase Kapone. Now Ase Kapone was born Keith Tyrone Fudge on May 5th, 1966 in Louisiana. But later on, his mother Peggy would move him to South Central at the early age of 1 year old. Now he would be raised by his mother as an only child. Now around the age of 2, his mother would remarry, but by the age of 6, she would get a divorce. Now, like many single parents, raising a child is extremely difficult to balance along with work life and being able to provide proper child care. So this would lead to his mother, Peggy, sending Keith off to live with his grandmother at the age of 6 in Marshall, Texas. Now, while in Texas, he would grow very close to his grandmother and he would attend church regularly. It was said that he loved attending church every Sunday and also he loved to sing in the choir. Now, outside of church, he was getting good grades. He was also a Boy Scout. But by 1975, he would be back in South Central. Now around this time, in South Central had become plagued with gang violence. Now the Crips had been pressing a line on every neighborhood, using bullying tactics, forcing local crews to get in line. Now Keith and his mother lived near 54th Street, and his hood had become the home of the notorious Van Ness Gangster Brims. Now this gang was founded by some young hustlers from a crew called the Van Ness Boys, like OG Swig and Michael Jordan. Now Keith, by his teen years, would begin to start hanging out on the street while his mother was at work, kicking it with the local Brims. Now eventually he would get his put on to the 5'4s. He would start going by Ase Kapone. Now by 1982, Kapone would attend Crenshaw High School, which at the time was a center of violence between rival gangs. Now Kapone was getting into multiple fights on a daily basis against rival Crip hoods like the neighborhood Crips. Now this would cause him to being kicked out of Crenshaw High his freshman year and later on being enrolled into Alexander High School. Now Alexander was a home of the schoolyards, the Playboys, and others. Now with Kapone being a Van Ness Gangster Brim, he would find himself getting into fights, and once again, he would be kicked out of school only months after being there. Now this violent behavior would lead to him being arrested multiple times as a teen for truancy and street fights. Now eventually Kapone would start attending Dorsey High School, where he would finally complete his freshman year, but by his sophomore year, he would be kicked out of school yet again due to his violent behavior. Now over the next few years, he would attend San Pedro High School and Los Angeles High. Now Kapone will be slightly behind with his schoolwork due to his constant missing school and getting into trouble. So by his junior year in 1984, he would decide to drop out at the age of 17. Now gang violence around this time was at an all-time high in LA, with more than 1,000 deaths due to gun violence. Now with Kapone no longer in school, he will be gangbanging, but also working odd jobs like as a car wash attendant and a gardener. But this was not enough to keep him away from the street life. Now things would all change for Kapone shortly after celebrating his 18th birthday. His mother would let him know that they were on the verge of losing their home, which was now in foreclosure, and this would lead to him rebelling even more, and him and her now clashing a lot about his street life. Now he would eventually move out and get a spot of his own, but things would go from bad to worse for Ase Kapone. Only 5 months later, on October 12, 1984, Kapone and his homies were parked near 54th and Western in his car when a group of 5 Deuce Hoovers would ride by. Only moments later, the Hoovers would do a U-turn and come back, and one of the Hoovers would hop out the car with a gun, and this would lead to Kapone and his homies hopping out the car and running down the street. Now after abandoning the car, the 5 Deuce Hoovers would steal Kapone's car. Now later that night, a party was being thrown on West 54th Street between Vermont and Hoover by 2 female friends that night. Now although this party was being thrown in the Hoover's hood, the 2 females did not want any gangs to attend this party. But regardless of the rules, the Hoovers and other Crips would show up anyway. Now because they were not allowed inside the house, the majority of the Crips would stand outside in the front yard just talking. Now this included Buddha from 5 Deuce Hoover, Lil Insane from 5'9", Lil Rick Rock from 5 Deuce, and Diane Raspberry, whose brother was from 5 Deuce Broadway, along with another kid by the name of Big Phil from 5 Deuce. Now as the party continued on, everything was going well. But at around 9:30 p.m., 2 vehicles would pull up outside of the party. 2 shooters would emerge from the car, one holding a shotgun and the other holding a rifle. And both men, out of nowhere, would open fire on the crowd of teens. The first to be hit were Buddha and Diana, who were talking near the sidewalk. Shots would then hit people that were standing on the front porch who were trying to flee and get away from the gunfire. but also hit was Lil Insane and Lil Rick Rock. Now, as the gunmen continued to fire, Big Phil from 5 Deuce will be shot and hit while trying to escape on his bike. Now, also at that party was the 5 Deuce Hoover named Tracy, who was one of the men who actually stole Ase Kapone's car. And he would actually pull out a pistol of his own and return fire, who would eventually hop back into the vehicle and flee the scene. Now, once the smoke had cleared, 11 people had been hit with gunfire. Now, Tracy Berry would call 911, who would arrive on scene shortly to find a massacre of teenager bodies laying on the ground.
Hey, don't go out by yourself and get lost. Okay, what's the status on missing?
5 were killed at one time, along with 5 more who were wounded. They were the victims of a drive-by shooting 2 weeks ago today, the worst such incident in the city's history. 5 killed 2 weeks ago. 4 were gang members. 1 was a 14-year-old girl, another a jobless teenager with thousands of dollars in his pockets.
No one is gonna stop.
5 people were pronounced dead on the scene. Teenagers, Lil Insane, Lil Rick Rock, Diane Raspberry, Buddha, and Big Phil. All the other teens who survived will be transported to the hospital and be treated for their injuries. Now, as the police began their investigation, looking into the shooting, surviving witnesses would later come forward and identify Ase Kapone and Fat Freddy as the shooters in the murder. Now, only a few weeks later, on November 10th, 1984, both Kapone and Fat Freddy would be arrested only 2 miles away from the crime scene at a known dope house. Now, both will be charged with 5 counts of murder and multiple counts of attempted murder. Now, later on, a man by the name of Harold Hall would also be arrested in connection with these murders. Now, eventually, by 1987, Ase Kapone will go to trial. Prosecution would claim that Harold Hall was the driver and Kapone and Fat Freddy were both the shooters. Now, multiple witnesses who were at the party that night of the shooting would testify. Also, a few jailhouse informants would testify. Now, a woman named Bridget, who was at the party, would tell the jury that she was talking to both Diana and Buddha when 2 men emerged out of a vehicle and opened fire. She would identify Ase Kapone as one of the men who she had begged not to shoot her. Another man named Carl Smith, who was from 5 Deuce Hoover, would testify that moments before the shooting, he saw Fat Freddy walking him near the house before leaving. And only 30 minutes later, Fat Freddy would return along with Kapone, both armed, and he would witness them open fire. Now, other Hoover members who took the stand would admit to stealing Kapone's car earlier in that day and that they end up leaving it in the alleyway after stealing the car stereo. Now, a woman named Angela Miller would also testify that 5 days after the shooting that she met with Kapone and that Kapone seemed nervous and that he admitted to her that he had just killed 5 members of the 5 Deuce Hoovers and that he was worried about his life. Now, the prosecution would also present 3 jailhouse informants who would allege that Kapone admitted to the 54th Street Massacre. Now, Kapone's defense attorney would also call multiple witnesses. A woman by the name of Lottie Martin would testify that Kapone was at her house the night of the shooting along with her grandson at around 9 p.m. She would go on to claim that she did not hear anyone leave the house or come in the house that night. Now, one of the biggest twists of the case would come when 2 brothers from 5 Deuce Hoover would take the stand testifying that the night of the party that Kapone was not one of the men who stepped out of that car armed with a rifle. Now, by the end of the trial, the attempted murder charges would be dismissed, but Ase Kapone would be found guilty of 5 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. Now, 2 years later, his co-defendant, Fat Freddy, would be acquitted on all charges. Now, although he was identified by multiple people, his attorney would point out that the witnesses that identified him were known career criminals who had received favors from the prosecution in exchange for the testimony. Now, Harold Hall, who was the alleged driver during the shooting, actually admitted to the police to being complicit in the murder on 54th Street, but all of his charges would be dismissed, but he would be found guilty on another murder, which happened only a year after the 54th Street Massacre. Now, as of today, Ase Kapone is 60 years old and still stand by that he is innocent of this crime. He is the only man currently in prison facing time for these murders while awaiting death row.
And they came back and shot the party up. I'm like, what's up? He said, get up, man. Your sister just got killed. I said, man, you bullshit, man. My mom, everybody crying like, fuck. She was 17 when she got killed. I couldn't go to her funeral. They said I was a known gang member, but they let me go see her body. I said, sis, don't worry about it. I'm gonna take care of that. You feel me? All out there, my revenge. Gonna knock some shit down when I get out. You feel me? And they got out and they had to do what they had to do. You feel me?
I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.